My name is Thomas Reed, and I'm 71 years old. If you told me years ago that the same sons I built my world around would one day forget I even existed, I would have laughed. But life, it has a cruel way of teaching you who really remembers. I wasn't born into money. My father worked at a factory. My mother cleaned houses. When I became a father myself, I made a promise. My children will never know hunger. Never feel the weight of empty pockets like I did. So, I worked. Harder than any man should. Long nights at the garage, early mornings on construction sites. My hands became calloused, my back ached, but every ache was worth it. Because I believed I was building something that would last beyond me. I dreamed of a future where my sons, David and Adam, would grow up proud. Where we'd sit on the porch together, old and gray, laughing about the struggles that got us here. And for a while, it felt like that dream was real. They'd hug me when I came home, bring me their school trophies, ask for my advice. But dreams don't last forever. The day they became successful, when money finally entered their lives, something changed. The warmth in their voices faded. The calls grew shorter. The love I once felt turned into distant courtesy. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to learn the most painful truth a parent can face. That sometimes, the more you give, the less they see your worth. I started working when I was 16. Back then, every dollar meant something. It meant food on the table, shoes without holes, a roof that didn't leak when it rained. My father used to say, "Hard work builds character, son." I didn't understand it then, but life made sure I learned. When my first son David was born, I held him in my arms and made a silent promise. You will never have to live the life I did. When Adam came along 3 years later, that promise doubled. I wasn't just working for myself anymore, I was working for them. Days turned into decades. I opened a small auto repair shop in town, just a dusty garage with 2 bays and a crooked sign. But I built it up, little by little. I'd leave before sunrise, come home after sunset, covered in grease but smiling because I knew my boys were sleeping under a roof their father provided. Sometimes, my wife Martha would worry. "Tom, you're pushing yourself too hard," she'd say, rubbing my tired shoulders. "I'm just getting started," I'd tell her. Because in my heart, every extra hour was an investment in my son's future. I missed school plays, football games, family dinners, but every time I handed them a new toy, every time we paid the bills without fear, I told myself it was worth it. They'd understand one day. They had to. As the years went by, the shop grew. I hired workers, expanded, even helped David through college. When Adam said he wanted to start his own business, I sold my old pickup and gave him the cash. I didn't hesitate because that's what fathers do. I watched them grow into men I was proud of. David, confident and ambitious, climbed the corporate ladder faster than anyone I'd ever seen. Adam, creative and bold, built his own company from scratch. When they visited, I'd make coffee, sit on the porch, and listen to their stories about meetings and investors and business trips. I didn't always understand, but I loved hearing them talk. Their voices were full of life, and I'd think this is what I worked for. But slowly I began to notice something. Their laughter faded when they spoke to me. Their calls became shorter, more mechanical. When I offered advice, David would smile and say, "Dad, things don't work like that anymore." Adam would laugh softly. "You wouldn't get it, Pops. The world's different now." Those words cut deeper than they knew. Because I wasn't asking to be understood, I was asking not to be forgotten. And still, I gave. I kept giving, even when they stopped thanking. Because love isn't about balance, it's about faith. Faith that one day, they'll remember what you sacrificed. But I was wrong. The truth is, sometimes the people you build your world around are the first ones to walk away once they've built their own. It started slowly, almost too quietly to notice. The calls that used to come every weekend became once a month. Then once every few months. The visits that used to light up my Sundays became maybe next week, Dad. Things are hectic right now. At first, I didn't think much of it. They had their own lives, their own responsibilities. I remembered how busy I'd been at their age, working long hours just to keep things together. So, I waited, patiently. But patience only goes so far before it starts to ache. I remember one Thanksgiving, the first one they both missed. Martha had passed away 2 years before, and I'd cooked her favorite recipes, just to feel her presence in the kitchen again. The table was set for 3. I even polished the good plates she loved. An hour passed, then 2. A text from David finally came through. "Hey, Dad. Sorry, can't make it this year." Something came up at the office. A few minutes later, Adam sent one too. "Sorry, Pop. The kids caught a bug. Rain check, yeah?" I sat there for a long time, staring at the turkey, the candles, the silence. That night, the food got cold, and so did something inside me. Still, I refused to be bitter. Every parent tells themselves, they'll come around, they'll remember. So I kept the porch light on, the same one they used to see from the road and yell, "Dad's home," when they were little. But years have a way of dulling hope. David bought a house in the city. I only knew because I saw the listing online. Adam expanded his company. I read about it in the paper before he told me. Whenever I tried to call, it was always, "Hey Dad, can I call you back later?" Later never came. The last time I saw them together was at Martha's funeral. They stood side by side, arms crossed, looking uncomfortable, like they couldn't wait for it to be over. After the ceremony, I heard David whisper to Adam, "We should sell the old house. It's just sitting there." I pretended not to hear, but I did. That night, I sat on the porch again, listening to the wind through the trees and the echo of their childhood laughter in my mind. I thought about all the times I carried them on my shoulders, patched up their scraped knees, stayed awake through their fevers, and I wondered, when did all that stop mattering? Sometimes I'd look at their photos and feel pride and pain tangled together. I wanted to call, to say I love you, I miss you, but something stopped me every time. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear of hearing the same distant tone, that polite, practiced voice people use when they don't really want to talk. The house got quieter each year. The walls still echoed with old memories, but they felt like ghosts now. I filled my days fixing things that didn't need fixing. The fence, the mailbox, the old car in the garage, because it felt better than fixing what I couldn't. And every night before bed, I'd glance at my phone one last time. No new messages, no missed calls. That's when I started to realize I hadn't just lost my sons. I'd lost my place in their story. It was a Saturday morning when the betrayal finally revealed itself. I remember it clearly. The sun was warm, the coffee smelled strong, and for the first time in months, I actually felt light. I was out fixing the gutter when a silver car pulled up to the house. It was David's. My heart jumped. He hadn't visited in nearly a year. He stepped out, wearing one of those expensive suits that didn't quite fit the small-town air anymore. His smile was forced, but I didn't care. It was my son. "Dad," he said, walking up the steps. "We need to talk." Those 4 words, they always mean trouble. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one I'd built by hand 40 years ago. He avoided eye contact. His hands fidgeted with his phone. I tried to make conversation, asked about work, the kids, and his wife. But he wasn't here for small talk. Finally, he sighed. "Dad, listen. Adam and I have been talking. About the house." My stomach dropped. "What about the house?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. He hesitated, then slid a stack of papers toward me. "We think it's time to sell. You can't keep up with it anymore. It's a lot for you to handle alone." I stared at him. The kitchen seemed to grow smaller, the walls closing in. "You want to sell our home?" "It's just a property, Dad," he said, his tone flat. "We could split the money. It'd help you out." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because disbelief was the only thing keeping me from breaking down. "This house," I said, tapping the wooden table, "is where I brought you home from the hospital, where your mother sang you to sleep, where I worked 40 years so you could have something that lasts." He looked away. "It's not personal, Dad. It's just business." Those words. Just business. That's what greed sounds like when it wears a familiar face. I wanted to yell, to shake him, to ask what happened to the boy who once promised he'd take care of me when I got old. But before I could speak, he added, "Adam already signed the paperwork." I froze. My youngest son, the one who used to beg me to stay up late and tell stories, who once cried when I missed his soccer game, had already agreed to sell the house. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not anger, not even sadness, just emptiness. I looked at David and said quietly, "Do what you need to do, son. You already have." He nodded, relieved, as if I'd just given him permission to erase our history. He left soon after, saying he'd be in touch. He never came back. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from the real estate company. The house had been sold. My name was nowhere on the final documents. The money had gone straight to David's account for convenience, the lawyer said. I packed my things into 2 boxes. A lifetime in cardboard. When I closed the door behind me, I didn't look back. because looking back only makes it hurt more. I moved into a small one-room apartment downtown. Cheap place, peeling paint, noisy neighbors. But it was mine. And as I sat there that first night, surrounded by the hum of traffic and the echo of silence, I realized something painful. I hadn't lost the house that day. I'd lost my sons years before. The house was just the proof. The first few nights in that little apartment were the hardest. The walls felt too close, the air too quiet. After 40 years of hearing laughter, footsteps, and voices calling Dad. Down the hallway, silence had a sound I couldn't bear. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, thinking I'd heard someone at the door. But there was no one. Just the wind brushing against the windows. I tried to keep busy. Fixed things that didn't need fixing. Rearranged furniture I barely owned. Even started walking to the park every morning, hoping to feel part of the world again. But everywhere I went I saw ghosts of the life I'd built. Families sitting together. Fathers playing catch with their kids. Laughter spilling into the air. And every time I wondered, did I push too hard? Was I the reason they drifted away? There's a special kind of loneliness that comes from watching the people you love build a world you're no longer part of. It's not just being alone, it's being forgotten. One evening, I found myself walking past our old neighborhood. The house, their house now, looked different. New paint, new fence, new car in the driveway. My name had been wiped off the mailbox like it had never been there. I stood there for a long time, watching the lights flicker on through the curtains. Then I saw a shadow, a man carrying a child. For a moment, my heart jumped, thinking it was David. But it wasn't. Just some other family, living the life I used to have. I turned around and walked away before the ache in my chest became too much. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. My phone never rang. My birthday came and went without a call. I used to think I'd be surrounded by grandkids, laughter, chaos. Now, even the sound of my own breathing felt loud. There's a park bench downtown where I started spending my evenings. Same spot, same time, every day. I'd sit there with a cup of cheap coffee, feeding pigeons, and watching people rush by. Couples holding hands, teenagers laughing. Businessmen are glued to their phones. The world kept moving, but I'd been left behind. Sometimes a little girl would come by to feed the birds. Her name was Lily. She couldn't have been more than 8. One day she asked, "Why are you always sitting here alone, mister?" I smiled and said, "Because I'm waiting for someone." She tilted her head, thinking. "Who?" I paused. "My sons." She nodded like she understood, even though she didn't. Then she smiled and said, "Maybe they just got lost." That night I cried for the first time in years. Not because of what she said, but because part of me hoped she was right. Hope is a stubborn thing. Even when love fades, hope hangs on, whispering that maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe the phone will ring. Maybe someone will remember. But tomorrow came. And the next day. And nothing changed. I learned to live with the quiet. I learned to cook for one. I even laughed sometimes, at old memories, at old mistakes. But every now and then, I'd catch myself staring at the empty chair across from me, imagining David sitting there, talking about work, or Adam joking about my old man habits. And for a few seconds, I'd let myself believe it was real again. Because sometimes the mind gives you mercy, the heart can't. It was a gray morning in late October when I heard the news. I was having coffee at the corner diner, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, or used to. The TV above the counter was playing the local business channel. I wasn't paying attention until I heard a name I hadn't heard in years. Reed Industries faces major losses after a string of failed investments, the reporter said. CEO Adam Reed has yet to comment on the company's collapse. The coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. Adam. My youngest. I stared at the screen as the anchor went on about lawsuits, layoffs, and debts. His face flashed across the TV. Tired, pale, older than I remembered. He looked lost. I felt a mix of emotions. I couldn't explain: anger, sadness, pity, and something like fear. I'd spent years watching from afar as they climbed higher and higher, thinking they didn't need me anymore. And now, it all came crashing down. When the news ended, I just sat there, staring into my cold coffee. I wanted to call him. Every instinct told me to, but a voice inside whispered, "Don't." After all, where had they been when I needed them? Still, that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Adam's face on that screen, not the businessman, but the boy who used to hand me tools when we built the treehouse together, the one who'd say, "Dad, when I grow up, I'll buy you a mansion." By the third sleepless night, I picked up my old phone and dialed his number. No answer. I left a short message. "Adam, it's Dad. I saw the news. Call me, son." A week passed. Nothing. Then, one rainy evening, there was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there he was, soaked, shivering, eyes red. The confident young man who once wore designer suits now looked like a stranger standing on my porch with empty hands. "Dad," he whispered, voice cracking. I didn't know where else to go. I stood there for a moment, the years of silence pressing between us like a wall. Then I stepped aside. "Come in, son." He walked in slowly, looking around the small apartment, the old furniture, the faded curtains. "You really live here?" he asked softly. I smiled faintly. "Yeah, it's not much, but it's home." He sat down, staring at the floor. "I messed up, Dad. Everything's gone. The company, the house. I even had to sell the car." I poured him some tea and said nothing. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he went on. "I wanted to be successful, to make you proud. But I got greedy, trusted the wrong people. And when things started falling apart, David wouldn't even return my calls." His voice broke. "I think I lost my brother too." I sat beside him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was heavier than words. "Finally," I said quietly. "You didn't lose me, Adam. You just forgot where to find me." He looked up, eyes full of tears. "I'm sorry, Dad." I reached over and put my hand on his shoulder. "I know, son. I know." We sat there for hours, no shouting, no blaming. Just two men, broken in different ways, finding their way back to something real. That night, after he fell asleep on the couch, I watched him breathe, the same way I did when he was a boy. And for the first time in years, the house didn't feel empty anymore. The next morning, sunlight crept through the curtains and fell across Adam's face. He looked peaceful, almost like the little boy I used to carry to bed after he'd fallen asleep watching cartoons. For a moment, I just stood there, watching him, remembering the years I'd missed. Birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners, all the times I thought, they'll visit next week. But that week never came. When he woke up, he looked around, disoriented. "Sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. "It's fine," I said. "You needed the rest." He smiled faintly. "It's been a long time since I slept without thinking about debt collectors or investors." I handed him a plate of eggs and toast. "Eat. You'll think better on a full stomach." As he ate, he talked, really talked, for the first time in years. He told me about the stress, the sleepless nights, the endless chase for more. "Every time I hit one goal, there was always another," he said. "I thought success would fill the hole inside me, but it just made it bigger." I nodded slowly. "That's because you were chasing money, not meaning." He looked up, his eyes meeting mine for the first time. "And you had both, didn't you?" I laughed softly. "No, son. I had love and hard work. The rest was never guaranteed." He didn't say anything after that, just sat quietly, thinking. Later that day, as he helped me fix the loose step on the porch, he said, "I talked to David before coming here. He didn't take my calls at first, but last night he texted me. What did he say?" Adam hesitated. "He said he's sorry too. Said he wants to talk to you if you'll let him." I stopped what I was doing, my hands trembling just slightly. David, the son I hadn't seen in almost 5 years. "When?" I asked. He said he could come by tomorrow. I didn't know what to feel. My heart was racing, my mind full of memories, teaching him to ride a bike, helping him with homework, watching him graduate. Then the silence, the distance, the way he'd vanished from my life without a word. That night, I barely slept. I kept wondering what I'd say. Would I be angry? Would I forgive him too easily? When morning came, I didn't have an answer, just hope. At noon, a sleek black car pulled up outside my house. David stepped out, wearing a sharp suit, but his eyes told a different story. There was no pride left in them, just weariness. "Hi, Dad," he said quietly. For a moment, we just looked at each other. I saw the boy he used to be, the one who'd raced to show me his report card, the one who'd once said, "I'll make you proud, Dad." "You look tired," I said finally. He nodded. "I am." We went inside. Adam stood by the window, unsure whether to smile or cry. The three of us sat around the old wooden table, the same one where we'd shared countless dinners long ago. Only now, the air was thick with years of unspoken words. David broke the silence. "Dad, I forgot what mattered. I thought being successful meant being independent. But I see now, I traded family for fortune, and I lost both." I swallowed hard. "You didn't lose me, son. You just forgot the way home." He looked down, eyes glassy. "Can I come home now?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "You never stopped being my son." Adam wiped his eyes, smiling weakly. "Looks like we're all home now." For the first time in years, laughter filled the house again. Soft, uncertain, but real. It wasn't the sound of success. It was the sound of something much rarer, a family finding its way back. That night, after the boys had gone to bed, I sat alone on the porch with a cup of coffee. The air was cool, quiet, the kind of silence that lets old memories slip through the cracks of time. Inside I could hear them, my sons, talking softly. Their voices carried a tone I hadn't heard in years. Not arrogance, not competition, just warmth. Humanity. And as I sat there, I couldn't help but wonder how things had gone so wrong for so long. I had spent my entire life building. Brick by brick, dollar by dollar, I built a home, a business, a future. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that you can't build love the same way you build walls. When they were young, I believed that giving them everything would protect them from the pain I'd known. I thought money would be a shield, but it turned into a mirror, reflecting everything they thought they wanted and nothing they truly needed. And I realized something. It wasn't just their fault. It was mine too. I had raised them to chase success because I thought success meant safety. But in doing so, I'd taught them to measure worth in numbers, not in love. The porch creaked as Adam stepped outside. He sat beside me, just like when he was a boy. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Too many thoughts," I said with a small smile. He nodded, staring out into the night. "Dad, do you ever regret working so much?" I took a deep breath. "Every day. But not because of the work. I regret what I missed while doing it." He looked down. "I used to think you cared more about money than us. But now I see, you were just trying to keep us safe." I turned to him. "And I used to think success would make you happy. But I see now it just made you lonely." For a while, we said nothing. The stars above seemed brighter than they'd ever been. After a few minutes, David joined us too, holding 3 mugs of coffee. "Figured you'd still be awake," he said, handing one to me. The 3 of us sat there in silence, the way men do when words can't fix what time already has. Finally, David spoke. "Dad, when Mom died, you didn't cry. I thought you didn't care. But now, I think I understand. You were just trying to stay strong for us." I smiled softly. "Sometimes being strong just means not falling apart in front of the people you love." He nodded slowly. "I wish I'd understood that sooner." I looked at both of them, my boys, now men, and I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. "I'm proud of you both," I said quietly. "Not for the money, not for the jobs, but for being here. For coming back." Adam smiled faintly. "We should have come sooner, maybe," I said. "But some lessons take time. The important thing is, you came." The wind rustled through the trees, and for a brief second, I could almost hear my wife's laughter in the breeze. It hit me then. Life isn't about how much we build or how much we earn. It's about who's sitting beside you when everything else falls apart. I raised my cup. "To second chances," I said. They both lifted theirs. "To family." The clink of the mugs was soft, but in that moment, it sounded louder than all the noise of the years we'd lost. And as dawn began to break on the horizon, I realized something simple. Something I'd been chasing my whole life. I hadn't worked my whole life for money. I'd worked for moments like this, and finally, I'd earned one. Weeks passed after that night on the porch. The house, once filled with silence and ghosts of the past, started to breathe again. Laughter returned, soft and cautious at first, like a song I hadn't heard in years, but still remembered the melody of. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of coffee already brewing. Adam had started helping me around the house, fixing things I'd let go of for years. David would visit more often, bringing groceries, sometimes just to sit and talk. They weren't doing it out of pity. I could see it in their eyes. This time, they were doing it out of love. Genuine, quiet love. The kind that doesn't need to be spoken to be understood. One morning, Adam and David sat me down. "Dad," Adam started, "we've been thinking. You gave us everything, your time, your sacrifices, your sweat. We want to give something back." I smiled, already knowing where this was going. "Boys, I don't need anything back. You being here is more than enough." David leaned forward. "No, Dad, we're not talking about money. We're talking about time. We want you to come live with us, both of us. Not because you have to, but because we want you there." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My throat tightened. I looked at them, both grown men, once boys who used to run barefoot through the yard, who I used to carry on my shoulders after long days of work. Now, they were offering me something I'd never asked for, but always hoped for. A place in their lives again. I nodded slowly. "I'll think about it," I said softly, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. That night, I sat by my old workbench, the same one where I'd built so many things in my life. Toys, furniture, and even the crib they both slept in as babies. My hands trembled as I picked up an old photograph. The three of us, covered in dirt and sawdust, smiling in front of the half-built house. The caption my late wife had written on the back said, "Our dream in progress." I smiled to myself. Maybe the dream had taken a detour. Maybe it had even fallen apart for a while, but now, it felt like it was being rebuilt, piece by piece. A week later, I visited David's home. His wife greeted me warmly, the grandkids running up with hugs. Adam joined us later, and for the first time in decades, my family sat together. No arguments, no tension, no distance. At dinner, my grandson asked, "Grandpa, why do you always work so hard?" I chuckled. "Because I wanted your dad and uncle to have everything I didn't." The little boy smiled innocently. "But you already gave them the best thing." I raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Love," he said simply. The table went silent for a second, the kind of silence that means more than words ever could. Adam reached across the table, placing his hand over mine. "He's right, Dad," David nodded. "You gave us everything we needed. We just took too long to realize it." I swallowed hard, emotion heavy in my chest. "Better late than never," I whispered. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about all those years I'd spent feeling forgotten. The sleepless nights, the empty phone calls, the ache of being left behind. But in that moment, I understood something simple. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It just makes room for peace in the present. And as I drifted to sleep, I finally felt that peace. I didn't know how many more years I had left, but I knew one thing for sure. I hadn't lost my sons. They had just needed time to find their way back, and when they did, I was still here, waiting, just like a father should. There's a quiet kind of peace that comes with age, not the kind you earn through comfort or success, but the kind that comes after you've lost almost everything, and still find reasons to smile. I sit on my porch every morning now, coffee in hand, watching the sun climb over the same hills I once worked beneath. The air is colder these days, but somehow it feels softer. Maybe because I finally learned what truly matters and what never did. For most of my life, I believed that love was proven through sacrifice, that being a father meant giving until there was nothing left. And for years I did exactly that. I worked every hour I could, broke my back so my sons could stand tall, and thought that one day, they'd see me as their hero. But life has a funny way of teaching lessons. When they found success, I faded into the background, not because they stopped loving me, but because I'd trained them to believe they didn't need me. I built them to be strong, but forgot to remind them that strength means remembering where you came from. It took years, and heartbreak for me to understand that being a parent isn't about control. It's about planting seeds, even when you may never sit in their shade. When my sons came back, they didn't just return to their father. They returned to the roots that made them who they are. And in their eyes, I finally saw what I had always hoped for. Understanding. If you're a parent watching this, maybe you've felt what I felt. Maybe you've given everything, and the silence from the ones you love the most feels heavier with every passing day. I want you to know something. You are not forgotten, even if they don't call, even if they don't visit, even if they never say thank you. Your love lives inside them, quietly shaping the people they've become. And one day, they'll remember. It might not happen when you expect it, but it will. Because love, real love, doesn't fade. It waits. If you're someone on the other side, a son, a daughter, let me tell you this. Success means nothing if you've lost sight of the hands that built your path. Money fades, fame fades, achievements turn to dust. But the people who raised you, who carried you, who gave everything they had for your tomorrow, they're the real legacy you'll leave behind. So, pick up the phone. Visit when you can. Say thank you, not because you owe it, but because it matters. I spent decades chasing the idea of being enough for my kids. Turns out, I already was. Now, when my sons come over for dinner, I don't lecture them about work or money. I just listen. I laugh. I watch them argue over who gets the last piece of pie. And every time I hear their laughter fill this house again, I thank the universe for one more day to feel like their dad. Because that's all I ever wanted. Not to be remembered as a man who gave everything, but as a father who never stopped loving, even when it hurt. And maybe, just maybe, that's what life is really about. Not the years you work, not the wealth you leave behind, but the love that stays long after you're gone. We build homes, but it's love that builds families. Fade out. Soft piano plays. The screen turns black with the final words. Call your parents. They're still waiting to hear your voice.